All right, welcome everyone. My name is Tiffany Scruggs and I work for the Washington APEX Accelerator. And I'm joined here today by Lisa Lagerstrom, who's also on the APEX Accelerator team. And we're excited today to talk about preparing to bid for the new Washington State Paint Supplies, and Painting Services solicitation that's out on the street right now. So the purpose of today is to get you oriented to the solicitation, walk through what an APEX Accelerator is and some other resources. And then we'll dive into the solicitation history. We'll review the opportunity itself. And prior to launching this course, you were sent the slide deck just a few minutes ago, I believe. You were sent a bid, no bid decision matrix, as well as a checklist. And so if you don't mind, we would love to do an interactive working environment with that pre-bid checklist today. So if you want to keep that open, if you have the ability to keep that open while you're on today's session, as well as a copy of the solicitation. We know that not everybody might be able to know how to download the solicitation, but if you are one of those people that has it downloaded, help me out by opening up the pre-bid checklist as well as the solicitation, and we'll have a little bit more fun and enriched discussion here today. So, and then we'll end today with resources. And I think representatives from Golden Gift Consulting are here, and maybe Table 100, and they can talk about what other resources are coming out for the solicitation. So welcome, and next slide. So a little bit about the Washington APEX Accelerator. We are a not-for-profit organization housed at the Thurston Economic Development Council, and we have 6 locations across the state, and we help businesses navigate government contracting. We have been in the business of providing no-cost advising services on how to succeed in government contracting for over 30 years. So we pull in nationwide best practices. And we're in partnership with Washington State Department of Enterprise Services. We do not work for Washington State Department of Enterprise Services, nor what we say and do, I guess, is kind of vetted through that agency. So we are in partnership with them. They send us a ton of businesses that need support. But beyond that, this is a separate event from the DES staff. Our mission, like I said, is to increase government contracts to all of you. And this is a snapshot of the team across the state. We have 17 advisors in all corners that can meet with you one-on-one to discuss solicitations, review bids, and talk about your procurement strategy when it comes to winning public sector work. And our full contact information you can find on our website. If you're feverishly writing down the email, the best email is just that info@, and Tori is amazing and we'll get you routed to the right spot. Next slide. All right, this is the fun part. So the solicitation history. So I wanted to kind of back up as far as I could go with just kind of a very basic question with how do state and government, so state government and local government agencies buy paint supplies and paint services. And I thought that might be just a really good baseline place to start. How do they buy that now? So on the paint supply front, a lot of paint is being purchased through the current almost nationwide contract through an organization called NASPO. And this is a competitive solicitation that was bid out a few years ago. And businesses can propose on that, or they get on contract for a multi-year term to sell all sorts of supplies. So you'll see Granger and you'll see some other big kids on there that are selling industrial supplies to government agencies. Any government that's involved in the NASPO and has a policy written that allows them to use the contract can piggyback on that or can hop on and just order what they need from that. So that's where a lot of the paint is currently being purchased. That contract expires in June, and I do not know what Washington State's intentions are after that. If they're going to continue to partner with NASPO to get their maintenance and other supply needs, or if they'll replace it with something else. But right now, that's how they're buying paint. The agency could also just do a request for quote, and this is common on the local government front. The state agencies typically use the statewide contract that's listed there at the top, the NASPO one. But local governments are invited to kind of do whatever they want. So they could issue a solicitation, a request for quote, They could use the NASPO contract that's linked there that the state uses, or they could kind of have their own supply contract way. So it totally depends on the agency. You also have some agency employees buying from Amazon. Maybe they don't know better, or maybe there is no alternative, or maybe the paint is so special that they need to go to Amazon to get it. I don't know. Or there might be other ways that I'm not familiar with. So agencies are all very decentralized, and they can kind of get what they need based on their own policies. And so I bring this up mainly because after award, so say you're the winner on this, you bid and you win, it's going to be a change of habit for these procurement professionals to go to the statewide master contract to buy paint from you. And so there's going to be kind of built-in cost of doing business where you're going to have to promote the fact that this new contract exists and you're on it, and to consider you in the future. So that's on the paint supply side. On the paint services side, a lot of times that's considered a public work, and it's valued at under $350,000 typically. And so it's going to go through a roster. So there's the MRSC roster. That's probably the biggest one in the state. There's agency rosters that are separate from that for local governments. There's also on-call contracts, which kind of operate similar to a roster that like City of Seattle and some of the other ones might have. They also might just compete it out. So I've seen solicitations for painting services on different various public facing websites and through our bid matching system. And there might be other ways that I'm not thinking of, but right now the governments are figuring out a way to buy paint supplies and paint services. And so the state of Washington is attempting to issue a solicitation that will become a contract that will be available to state agencies and local governments to use instead of these other ways. Next. So Washington State Department of Enterprise Services is kind of the central buyer for state agencies. They have over 1,500 businesses that they give contracts to, and almost $2 billion in annual spend. So it says 1,500 vendors. The businesses are the vendors, and so they have a lot of history in working with businesses and issuing solicitations. This is what they do. They are in charge of maintaining the statewide contracts for commonly purchased goods and services. So government likes to be as efficient as possible when they buy things. They don't want to go out to bid competitively every single time they need something. So they issue these statewide contracts ahead of time, and then agencies can just go shopping. Paint is a new statewide contract for Washington State. And what probably happened internally to DES is that they analyzed spend data from state and local agencies to determine the need for a statewide contract. They might have talked to their customers, which are government agencies within the state or local governments, and said, hey, where do you want us to focus our energies? We can't have a statewide contract for everything. And paint rose to the top and got in the planned procurement. We've been watching it on planned procurement page for many moons. So we're excited that it's finally landed. Paint and painting supplies, I already mentioned, can be purchased right now through the facilities maintenance linked here. And that contract does expire in June. So one question that if I were a vendor attending the pre-bid session with the DES is I would ask about their intentions of whether or not they're going to renew that. If they did tag along to the new NASPO contract and use that, then I would foresee an opportunity where agencies would have a choice to either use the Washington State statewide contract or the NASPO to get their paint supplies. So that's just a question that I had that might influence your decision to bid or not bid. Next. So this is the contract that I'm talking about that it's expiring. You can take a look there. And that link is live in the slide deck that we sent you. So that'll take you right there. Go ahead and click next. And what I wanted to point out on this is that each contractor has a link to the pricing Excel sheet. So you can take a look at their pricing and how it's increased over the years, and the discount that they're offering to the government agencies who buy from them. Next. This is what that pricing sheet looks like. It's kind of like the first first screen's worth of columns are set, and then you kind of got to scroll left to see the pricing data. So if you need help on that, let us know. It's kind of a wonky Excel file. But from there, you can see what it is that's up on contract and the pricing that that business has offered the government. Next slide. So I wanted to mention what I was talking about was mainly the supplies, the painting services, that data isn't quite as available in that same format. So as I said, this is a new solicitation, but you might be able to see who the state has bought from in the past, what they bought and how much they paid for it. And you can do some of that through the open checkbook, and that link is available to you. And that's really good if you know the competitor's name. You can take a look at them and see who they've done business with, which agencies, and kind of take a look there. There's also the Labor and Industries Public Works database, which is very up to date and very informative to see what governments are buying what. So you could take a look at that and also kind of reverse engineer the data in there to take a look at who's winning the work and how much they're charging the government for doing that. Next slide. So this is the current opportunity that's on WEBS. I want to mention very clearly that WEBS is the only authoritative source for this solicitation. And WEBS is maintained by the Department of Enterprise Services. And so if you found the solicitation because maybe somebody on the APEX team emailed it to you, or maybe you saw it on the OMWB website, the likelihood that that solicitation is going to stay current and be up to date even right now is very low. So we always recommend that you pull the actual solicitation from WEBS yourself, and you are receiving emails about amendments. We've already had one amendment since the solicitation launched, and I'm expecting a second one any minute. We'll talk about why in a second. And so I want to point out there, I have circled on there the reference number as well as the commodity codes. So inside your WEBS profile, you should be programming your commodity codes to match all of the ones here and probably others. Next slide. So you can also inside WEBS see who else is downloading this. And this kind of gives you a small glimpse into potential competition. It also allows you to see how the contractor sees you, the contracting officer, how they see you. We want to make sure that you are correctly listed as a small business if you are a small business. And so we've provided the legend there on the far right column, are all those letters. And if your profile is out of date or it's not showing you as a small and you think you're a small, now is the time to fix that in the system. And I will give a plug to the WEBS customer service desk. Joe is phenomenal. He actually answers the phone when you call most of the time and can kind of help you overcome any barrier. So next slide shows you kind of what it looks like when you're updating your profile. This is, I think, a snapshot of my profile, and it shows that we're considered a Washington small, but not a veteran-owned business. And so just make sure that your profile is up to date and is accurate, because that's you self-attesting, self-certifying yourself and your size standard of the business. Next slide. Okay, so the fun part. So if I scrolled all the way down on the bottom of that web solicitation, that's where I see the attachments. And this is the most important part of the solicitation. So you want to download all of the attachments and read them. And we'll talk a little bit about what you're reading and what you're looking at in a second. But I do want to point out there's two columns there. There's the solicitation documents that are posted originally, I think on March 11th. And then there's the amendments on the right-hand column. And we already have an amendment that pushed the pre-bid to March 21st instead of today. So if you're planning to attend the pre-bid at 1 or 1:30 or whatever time the original posting was, that has now changed and is now March 21. You should have gotten an email notification about that amendment if your WEBS profile and everything was all set up and you were receiving emails from WEBS as planned. So you don't want to rely on anyone else. I noticed the OMWBE has cross-posted this opportunity on their opportunity and bid page. However, they still have the original posting date, which showed the pre-bid as March 18th. So if you're relying on a third party that's not an authoritative source, that might catch you up later, because we are expecting more amendments to post. So I know it's easy for me to say to read and understand all the documents, but have no fear. There's lots of people that can help you decipher the Greek that is sometimes found in these government solicitations. So if it seems overwhelming and you don't know where to start, by all means, sit down with an advisor. There's several free advisors available to you for this particular solicitation, and let us walk you through it, and let us cut to the chase as to what's important and what you can kind of pay more attention to versus the other fluff that's in there. There's no fluff, it's all important, but you get what I mean. The other thing I want to make sure is beware of embedded or linked documents inside solicitations. Probably the most best story is we had a solicitation out and there was some warranty information that was linked. And when you pulled open that other document that was inside the document, up popped some pretty important information about a training requirement for when the contract was being deployed into the agency that would have influenced the firm's pricing. So at first glance through all of these documents, I would recommend you look at it through the lens of, how is this going to impact my ability to perform and my ability to set pricing that will that I can live with. So anyway, that's webs. Is anyone having challenges with webs that you would like to bring up now? We have a few minutes for questions on finding the solicitation and downloading it and all of that. Any questions?
There are no questions in chat. You definitely can raise your hand and we can call on you. Okay.
Great. All right, next slide.
Okay, we're going to go on then, Tiffany.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So this is a kind of a pre-bid checklist solicitation review kind of journey that we're going to take together today. We're going to start the journey anyway. So that first step is to access the authoritative source, the official documents for the solicitation. Pay particular attention to the solicitation document as well as Exhibit B. For those of you that have an Exhibit B, we'll talk about Exhibit B in a second. And then you need to decide if you're going to bid or not bid. You have a decision. This isn't a requirement because you're a painter or because you sell paint supplies. You want to be strategic and thoughtful. And that bid or no bid decision could be quick. It doesn't have to be very long or lengthy, but we do want you to just pause for a second and ask your business if that is something that you want to pursue. And we'll talk a little bit more about that bid, no bid analysis in a second. And then you really want to plan your approach, your capture plan. How are you going to organize this? How are you going to attack it and then kind of do it, right? And so you want to assemble your bid package, make your checklist, check it twice, and go ahead and submit on time. If you are 1 minute late, you are late and your bid will not be reviewed. The government's extremely particular about that. They have to be by law. Next slide. So this is the pre-bid checklist. So for those of you who everything I've talked about so far was a review and you're in webs and you're ready to roll, please pull up your pre-bid checklist that we sent you that is in Word so that you can fully customize it to your needs. You can add rows of information. You can do whatever you need to do to make it your tool. And we recommend this for every business that's bidding on complicated solicitations, to have some sort of way of creating your own checklist, because government contracting solicitations don't read like a novel. They're not, they don't guide the reader in a seamless fashion to an endpoint that is cohesive. They are legal documents and they're usually quite complicated. I mean, this one has several exhibit documents and so that reference each other and back and forth. So having a central checklist that you create as you go through and read it not only gives you something to do so you don't have your eyes glaze over and forget why you're even reading it, but two, it also helps you pull out the really critical pieces of the solicitation, including deadlines, including evaluation factors for award, and all the things that we're going to talk about today. So that's my pitch for creating a pre-proposal checklist. You don't have to use ours. You can make up your own, or you can use ours as a starting point to make up your own. So if you don't have one, just pop up ours and we're going to walk through it. So this is the interactive piece. So for those of you who have the solicitation open, can anyone tell me the solicitation number that we would write on the checklist in that top box? You can unmute and just shout it out.
And how to unmute is in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. It's the microphone with the X over it.
Is anyone?
Is it the 19722?
Let's click and find. Yeah. All right. Thank you, sir. I don't know who said that, but I appreciate you playing my little game here. So yes. So that's. Oh no, you cheated. Okay. What's the deadline for submittal? Anyone want to read to me what's on the screen?
My birthday, May 10th.
May 10th, 24.
Did anyone find the time? What time is it due on May 10th? This might seem silly now because you're all planning to get it in on May 9th, right? So you give your a day buffer. But when it comes time to May 10th and you're not ready yet and you have to submit, the time of day becomes usually very important. So I didn't see it. I don't think it's in there. That might be something that the businesses on the line want to ask DES. Historically, it's the 11:59, but not always. So we want to make sure that we're all in agreement on the time. What's the next one there? The pre-proposal. Oh, go ahead and click, Lisa. And I always have to give myself a reference point as to where did I read that, because so like right now I have a printout of the whole solicitation and I will forget what page I read what on. So I want to make sure that that's all up to speed. So what's that next question there? Pre-proposal conference date. Did anyone find that?
Nothing in chat.
So when's the pre-proposal conference? Who wants to try and take a stab?
Which is also called the pre-bid conference.
Right.
Hi, this is Ryan.
All
I can
right.
answer that. It's going to be on Thursday, 21st at 1:30.
Where did you
Correct?
find that?
Actually in the solicitation amendment. So I just wanted to, if it's okay, I'd like to just add the second you on the emphasis on checking the web's platform, because sometimes there are a lot of amendments and some of these dates could possibly change again.
The site visit date. So a lot of times this is really important when it comes to construction or some other type of solicitation, fence building or whatever that needs you to view the site so you can do an accurate quote. This is not applicable today. So, but I still have it in the checklist because this is your checklist and it might be applicable to you in future solicitations, or you could just delete it. Again, this is your template to make it your own. Next one, pre-proposal inquiry cutoff date. Thank you, Lisa, is March 11th through April 29th. Does anyone know where Lisa found that answer? Which page, which document? So I'm in the main solicitation document and I'm on page 5 and there's all sorts of deadlines in there. That's where we found the deadline to submit. That's where the old, depending on the version, the old conference date, the pre-bid conference date was found. Also the issue date of solicitation, if you want to click twice there, Lisa. So the other thing that's in the solicitation that I wanted to bring out is the reserved award. These could also be considered preferences for veteran-owned businesses and small businesses. In the federal side, we call them set-asides for federal contracting or any other competitive advantage that we want to cull out. And this is important if you're a large business too, because you want to know what the competitive environment is but it's also important for your small businesses out there. So does anyone want to tell me, is there any reserved awards for this particular solicitation that you've come across?
Okay, I do have a question that came in.
Great.
Let's do that. It says, would you clarify the importance of a pre-bid conference to us?
Oh, yeah, perfect. So while you are all looking for the reserved award information inside the solicitation, I will answer that question. So I think it is optional. Most of the time, the pre-bid conference is totally optional, but you can learn a lot about the solicitation. You have an opportunity to introduce yourself to the contracting officer, to that procurement professional, which, you know, isn't supposed to make a difference, but we want to start building that relationship and gleaning as much information as possible about what the state needs. So it's also a great time to kickstart your question and answers. A lot of times you'll be at the pre-bid meeting and you'll ask a question and they'll say, do you mind submitting that in writing? We'll provide a formal written response. And that's because they do have rules around that, that they want to create a fair and equitable playing field when it comes to solicitation. So they don't want to answer a question for some and not others. So all the Q&A will be posted for the world to see after the conference. But I highly recommend always attending if you can, even if it's optional. They're also held very early on, which is helpful too, because that forces you to be introduced to the solicitation way before May 10th. May 10th sounds like a long time from now, but I promise you that'll come up really fast. And you probably have some work to do in your business to prepare for that May 10th deadline. So by attending the pre-bid, you're oriented to the solicitation nice and early. And I've already identified a couple questions that you probably could consider asking at that pre-bid conference. Sometimes the procurement professional at DES shows up to this event. Are they on the line?
I do not have
Okay.
Paulina in there.
All right, perfect. So I was going to let her give a pitch too, but that's okay. All right, the issue date of the solicitation was March 11th. That was found on, if you click page 5. And then go ahead and click one more time. Did anyone find the reserved award?
I saw them. It looks like they're on page 3, and it looks like there's 4 reserved awards for each county, for each category.
That's right.
For veteran, yeah, for reserved awards, yeah.
Yep. So they'll do 2 standard awards, meaning lowest, or whoever scores the highest points, and then they'll do 4 reserved awards for certified veteran-owned businesses or Washington small businesses. And that is on page 3. And I'm assuming in the pre-bid conference on the 21st, they'll go over that in a lot of detail so that everyone understands what they're gonna do. Go ahead and do the next click. So thanks, Lisa. So method of proposal submission, I always include this on my pre-bid checklist. How am I going to get this to the agency? Do I have to upload to a portal? Do I have to hand deliver? What is it? With DES, that you email it, it has to be unzipped. It has to be less than 25 megabytes. And that's found on this instructions to bidders on page 16. The other thing I always include is the type of solicitation, because this is going to impact my assessment of risk. How risky is it to bid on this? What are the terms? So go ahead and click the next one there. This, how are they going to evaluate you? So for paint supplies is different than painting services. So for you suppliers on the line, the paint supplies is 950 points for price. So they're going to be looking for the lowest price. There's some extra bonus points for following Executive Order 1803, which has to do with labor rights of your workers. And 25 points for non-hydrofluorochloride something or other, and 50 for PCB. So those are the kind of the green executive order requirements that have come out over the past few years that you would want to make sure that you can qualify or not for those, and you get little bonus points there. For painting services, the solicitation indicates on page 8, if you're following along, that they care not only about price is 400 points, they also care about what they call non-cost factors. So these are going to be probably past performance, and timeliness and quality assurance, and who knows what else is in there. And the reason I say who knows what else is in there, because I cannot find Exhibit B. So normally, you would go to Exhibit B, and it would be kind of how you articulate your non-cost factors. And that's not, I can't find that. So that's not out yet. I expect that to come out in amendment relatively soon. Ryan, did you see it by chance? It's not, you know anything more that I don't know?
I've only seen one amendment today, and
Okay.
that's the one with the pre-bid conference.
Okay, cool. I wasn't able to check over the last hour. So anyway, I assume that's coming out because there's lots of references to Exhibit B throughout the solicitation document. So we'll wait for that. But typically, it's an opportunity for you to put into a narrative different elements of your firm and how wonderful you are. So it could be questions about your timeliness, or your past performance, or credentials of your painting team, that kind of thing. So that's where the painting services, it's particularly important to meet with a government contracting advisor at no cost to review what your narrative is there, because you're probably going to be limited on page count. And your non-cost factors are worth 550 points. So your advisor is going to be working with you one-on-one to try and get you that 550 points. So if you go it alone, you might not, be aligning what the government wants with as well as if you met with an experienced advisor. Next slide, or next click. The type of contract. So this, I would call it firm and fixed for at least 1 year. And I read that in the Exhibit D. Exhibit D is the sample contract. So DES is great because they give you exactly what you can expect after award, so that you know your risks going into the solicitation, so you know if you can respond or not. However, that's in Exhibit D. The solicitation says that you are to set pricing for 2 years, and that's mentioned on page 7. And so in the Exhibit D, for the 1 year, after 1 year, there's an economic adjustment that's tied to an index, and that may go up or it may go down. But you should kind of know what your rights are in terms of an economic adjustment. And so that's a point of clarity that might be something good to bring up in the pre-bid conference, or at least during that Q&A period. Are you supposed to set 2 years worth of pricing and you're locked in with no economic adjustment? Because if so, that's going to influence probably the pricing that you set. So we want to, and this, people are like, does this have to really slow me down a whole lot if I already know I want to bid? And the answer is no, it doesn't have to slow you down. It's totally optional. It's just a recommended best practice to take a look at your company's goals, your proficiencies, and your likelihood of success, because it forces you to slow down and read the solicitation without making too many assumptions about what this is going to mean for your company. A lot of times people hear, wow, statewide contract, I'm going to get all these state agencies and all these local governments buying from me. And that'll be the answer to my dreams. But is it? So, are you prepared for that level of business, or are you prepared for the risk that it won't be that type of business if you're thinking it's going to be a big deal? So, what I want to reiterate is that you are probably a small business if you're on this call and you do not have the time or the luxury to bid on things that aren't going to be useful to your firm. So, think about it, talk with your advisor about it, and just kind of do a little bit of analysis there. This also allows you to think about why you want this work and how you'll bid competitively, because there's a strategy behind that. So next slide, let's talk a little bit about the worksheet we sent you. So the bid or no bid, this is again a checklist that you can totally revamp and make your own. And it might not even need to be this many questions, but they're separated into the first section is, can we bid? And this is a question we always recommend businesses ask themselves. So, can you meet the technical requirements of the request? If you can't, then you have 2 options. You can walk away, be like, I can't win. I won't do the fail, pass, check. you're just not going to meet the technical requirements, your bid's going to be tossed in the garbage. That's one option. Or two, you could ask the contracting officer to change the technical requirements and better align with what you can do. So that first question, can you meet the technical requirements? Yes or no? And if no, then what are your next steps? Can you meet the schedule requirements? I'm not sure that that's really necessary today, but maybe there is something in Appendix D that talks about response time, that you have to be on site within a certain amount of time or something like that. And how will that impact your workforce and all of that? So you want to keep an eye out for that. Do you understand the risks associated with kind of the program or how painting services and painting supplies will be purchased? And can you mitigate those risks? So, so for example, if you thought that there was very few risks and maybe the state was not going to renew the NASPO contract with that other painting work and you sell supplies, and for sure going into it that the state agencies are going to be mandated to buy painting supplies from this contract, that lowers your risk, right? And so I would give that maybe a 4 or 5. But if the state is going to renew that NASPO contract for painting supplies, that kind of increases your risk level a little bit. And I would score this solicitation a little bit lower because now you're going to have to use your time to promote the fact that you're on this new master contract and that you're better and brighter and better than whatever else is on the other contract. So keep that in mind. Do we have our experience to match the needs of the requirement? This is a question you cannot answer without reading Appendix B. And like I said before, Appendix B is not out yet. So keep an eye out for that. Do you have the resources to put together a winning bid? So, sometimes businesses, y'all are busy, right? So you're performing on work, you're bidding new work, and do you have the time to put in a bid that's responsive to what the government needs, but is also something that your firm is proud of, that you can kind of stand behind? And we don't have to go through all of these, but essentially you kind of walk through some of these questions and other questions within your own business and score yourself like 5 yes, 1 no, and create a quantitative number. A lot of times we bid based on gut or pride or something like, I have to go after that because I know my competitor is going to be there, and you kind of get the juices flowing a little bit, which is what I love about entrepreneurs. But we want to quantify it a little bit and kind of take the emotion out of it and find out, are you able to bid effectively and perform after award? Next slide. So this is the second question we recommend you ask yourself. Do we want to bid? So, maybe you're a general contractor and you specialize in framing and drywall, and the painting is like, oh yeah, we can paint it too. It's not your core business though. And so, do you want to paint, just do the painting? So is it core to your business? You would rank it a 5 if you're J. Linder Painting and that is your specialty. And you would rank it a 2 or a 1 if it was kind of an add-on thing that you do sometimes. Let's see, is there additional work? Can you be profitable? And you can feel free to change this language. Is there additional work after this program? Is kind of a federal term, but you can, is there additional work outside of this statewide contract or something like that? So this is your worksheet to kind of customize to your needs. Seeing, is there an incumbent? So like early on, there's no statewide contract to compare this to, but the state is buying this now. And you can, if you're especially in supplies, you can take a look at that pricing and determine if it's something you can be competitive on, because we know what the state has been buying paint supplies at for many years. And so we can kind of help you uncover that. Services a little bit harder. That's going to be prevailing wage plus the markup. So we can kind of try and reverse engineer some of that. All right, next slide. So kind of backing up to where we started, we recommend kind of these 4 steps to move along. 1 is to get access to webs. 2 is to get access to paint supplies. 3 is to get access to and read the solicitation documents, paying particular attention to solicitation document. And if you're in the services side of it, Exhibit B. If you're just selling supplies, Exhibit B does not apply to you. And then decide whether or not you're going to bid. And that you could have maybe already decided that, but ideally you read the solicitation first with kind of that lens of, can you be successful and do we want this work? And then organize your approach. And that's and assemble the bid. And that's what we're not going to talk about today, but we highly recommend you bring to your advisor. Like, okay, I've decided to bid this. I've got all my documents. They're in like a handy dandy binder or they're saved on my computer. And I'm ready to kind of walk through my approach, how I'm going to approach Exhibit B if you're in services, and kind of all your questions. And hopefully you do that sooner than later, because that Q&A period will eventually close and you'll have no other opportunity to get your questions answered by DES itself. So that Q&A period ends, I believe, April 29th. So you want to start the process soon so that you can get as many questions asked as you need in order to assemble your bid and submit no later than May 10th. So next slide, let's talk a little bit about resources, I think. Oh, no, my top tips. And then we'll talk about resources with Ryan, and I don't know if Veronica's on, but anyway, number one, ask questions and identify barriers to your participation now. So DES contracting staff, I don't think purchases a ton of public works. The public works side does, for sure. But this is in the goods and services side of DES that are typically not going to be buying public works type services. So there might be something in here that's totally missing, or that's a barrier to your participation that DES, of course, didn't intend. But identify it now so that they can try and fix it, or at least everyone is aware of it. My second tip is, when you look at the sample contract, Exhibit D, look at it through the lens of what in here is going to impact my pricing. So Renee already mentioned bonding and insurance. I'm going to call out the vendor management fee on page 22 of the master contract, or of the contract itself, which says, I'll read it. It says contractor shall pay enterprise services a vendor management fee of 1.25% on the purchase price for all contract sales. So that must be rolled into the contractor's current pricing. So we've had firms kind of miss that in the sample contract and miss out on that, because that just comes directly out of profits if you forget to add it in. Go back one slide. The next top tip is to get a debrief meeting, regardless of whether or not you win. So you can learn a lot in that meeting about how your bid, how you can prepare the next one to be even more successful. So ask for a debrief, and now it's a meeting with the contracting officer or the procurement person to sit down and talk about your bid and what worked in it. If you don't win, you can kind of sit around and pout for like half a day, and then let's get busy. Let's meet with you and talk about other strategies for getting work in the public sector. Maybe there's subcontracting opportunities. Let's target agencies who are not using the statewide contract. There's lots we could do. So only sit around for half a day, and then let's get to work if you didn't win. Number 5, double check that you're a Washington in-state small. We've talked a lot about this. It's inside your WEBS profile. Log into WEBS, look at your profile. That's what the contracting officer is going to determine, or they're going to look at that to determine if they can give you a reserved award or not. If you are veteran owned and you're not certified, get certified. It's really painless. You have plenty of time to do it before the May 10th deadline. So if you are veteran owned, you can click that link inside the slide deck we gave you, and it'll bring you right there. Next slide. So there's also another event on March 20th, and it's a hybrid. So if the Zoom stuff isn't cutting it and you want to meet with somebody in person, go to Tabor on Wednesday, March 20th from 4 to 6. They're going to really dive into the solicitation, and they'll probably get a chance to dive in further than we had on this venue here. The link is there, which is in the slide deck, and maybe we could throw that in chat too if you want to hang on if you can't find it. Next slide. And then one-on-one assistance. So this is really where all your questions can really be uncovered and discussed with a qualified advisor. And both Golden Gift Consulting and Washington APEX Accelerator are here to support you in that. Veronica and Ryan, if you want to kind of go on camera and wave, are qualified to walk you through. And what we can do, these two groups can offer the no-cost advising on the solicitation. We can review your bid. We can discuss your strategy and kind of make sure that what you're putting forth to the government is responsive, right? It's what they ask for. And it's competitive, so that you have the best chance of winning. So you can work with both of us, or you can work with one of us. But there's a contact information there. Ryan, did you want to say anything else?
Tiffany, just wanted to second what you said and say that, yep, Golden Gift will be here along with APEX Accelerator to support you in preparing your proposal, everything from non-cost to cost, exhibits, checklists, and we're happy to walk through the whole thing with you and make sure that you have a compliant one by the time that it's time to submit.
Great. Thank you. All right, next slide. I think, are we good? Okay, so that training at WashingtonApex.org goes right to Lisa. That's our website. If you're not in Washington, that's okay. We'll send you to our colleagues across the state lines. And you can also join our newsletter for upcoming opportunities and events. So any other questions coming in, Lisa? It's at 1 o'clock already. We're there.
There are no other questions. I did ask one person to stay online that couldn't use the mic. We'll figure that one out. Yeah.
Okay. Well, best of luck to everyone on the line and everyone watching this recording after the fact. We want to see as many Washington firms successful in selling to the state and local governments as possible. So let us support you. Let's see what we can do. Good luck out there, and take care.